पेपर मिस हो गया वो फिर सुन सकती हूँ।
क्या ये वेरीफाइंग करके बताओगे? चल तो इंट्रोड्यूस आप ही कर दोगे क्योंकि हमारे चेयरमैन तो है नहीं कर रहे। नहीं वो तो ऑनलाइन दिख रहा है यहाँ पे था वो गेस्ट हाउस में। अभी कम ही हो रहा है ना।
सच में चीफ गेस्ट हूँ मैं इधर, तब से आपको तो मिला ही नहीं दोबारा।
ऑडिटोरियम का माइक अभी ऑफ है, आप जब प्रेजेंटेशन स्टार्ट करें तो ऑन कर लीजिएगा।
बोलता हूँ वीडियो ऑफ करो।
वीडियो तो ऑफ है ना, वो जस्ट फोटो लगा हुआ है।
फोटो है वो।
हाँ
लेट्स स्टार्ट, इसको अनम्यूट कर देते हैं। Okay, good afternoon everyone. So today we have this talk by Dr. Vikas Chand, who is currently a postdoctoral fellow with Dr. Bingjing Zhang at the School of Astronomy and Space Sciences, Nanjing University in China since December 2020. So he has completed 1 year of his postdoctoral period in China. Before that, he was a PhD student with Professor A.R. Rao in TIFF, and he has worked extensively on the AstroSat CZTI data, primarily working on the high energy transients, which are known as the gamma ray bursts. And right now, his research interests are primarily focused on GRBs, but very recently, he has also been working on studies related to giant flares observed in the soft gamma ray repeaters, which are also known as SGRs. And when he is not working, Vikas is mostly interested in playing volleyball and table tennis, which you might have also seen during his last 2.5 months stay in Aries. And I have known him during since his PhD times, and I know that he is a very avid mountaineer, and he wants to climb the Mount K2 someday, and hopefully he will do so. So Vikas, over to you. You have 45 minutes, and then we'll have some question and answers discussions after the talk. Okay?
thank you. So happy to be here. So gamma ray bursts, they have puzzled the astronomers and astrophysicists equally since they were first.
Can you ask them if they are audible?
Oh, अच्छा वो म्यूट करना।
Yes, Suhendu ji, voice is clear, but it is good if Vikas ji get other side of the table.
Other side, east side.
No, this one, there, where you are sitting, in the line of that.
इधर इस साइड।
Okay.
So he will be audible as well as visible.
Okay, so gamma ray bursts, they have puzzled astronomers since they were discovered in late 60s. So what I perceived from what I have perceived, what I have planned is that I will make this talk mostly for the new students.
वहाँ पे क्लिक कीजिए, वो सिलेक्ट हो गया तो स्क्रीन क्लिक कर दीजिए माउस से।
कहाँ पे?
माउस से माउस में हाँ ये स्क्रीन पे टैप करो।
ये अच्छे से।
नहीं अपने लैपटॉप पे।
हाँ वो टैप कर दो लैपटॉप में।
लैपटॉप से कनेक्ट है।
भैया स्क्रीन टच कीजिए, स्क्रीन टच कीजिए।
स्क्रीन मतलब वो ये वाली स्क्रीन,
मॉनिटर वाली स्क्रीन को टच कर।
मैं टच करूँ?
वो हाँ वो स्क्रीन टच
ऐसे?
अरे आई डोंट थिंक उसमें होगा, वो कीबोर्ड से ही उसको स्क्रॉल करना पड़ेगा।
कीबोर्ड से कर लो बेटा,
कीबोर्ड से उस पे सेलेक्ट कर दो, वो नीचे जा रहा है।
तो सब कुछ ही बन गया।
Actually, the presentation is running from the laptop, so you have to change the things from laptop only.
स्क्रीन शेयर कर रखा है ना।
आई थिंक वो अप और डाउन की से एक बार ट्राई करके देखो।
सिस्टम ही हैंग हो गया। चल रहा है।
लैपटॉप हैंग हो रहा है।
हाँ।
इसको टैप करना है ना, ये क्या हो रहा है?
ये वो अब रिस्पॉन्ड कर रहा है।
हाँ ये ठीक है, वो कीबोर्ड से ही कंट्रोल करो आई थिंक।
इसको टैप करना, नेक्स्ट लाइन से ना।
अच्छा तो पिछला
पिछला वाला ये ऐसे है ना, पिछला
वही बैक और just arrow.
और इसको इधर plot कर।
हाँ अच्छा, हाँ इससे भी चलेगी। Okay. So in my talk, I will I will provide an introduction to gamma ray burst. Then I will review the methods which are used to measure the Lorentz factor of the gamma ray burst, and what are the present understanding of our understanding of gamma ray burst, and then what are the recent developments and the challenges which are posed by these new solutions. So here, as the title of my talk, that how fast are the gamma ray burst. So this number have some relevance that they represent the Lorentz factor, which is some 10 and 100 and 1000. And there is this other character for C, which means that I'm talking about superluminal motion. Okay, so first starting with how bright are the gamma ray burst. If we have some dark night sky and we are out there, then we may see a gamma ray burst with our naked eyes. So they are very bright. There was one particular GRB 080319b, which could be seen with the naked eyes, as it has an apparent magnitude of 5.8. So but this is not how we see gamma ray burst. We see gamma ray burst, this was not how the gamma ray bursts were first detected. They were first detected in gamma rays by the Vela satellites, and the light curve of GRBs is somewhat like this, very fast, like impulsive pulse, which lasts for a couple of seconds, tens of seconds, and then it is very bright. Gamma ray burst. Okay, so there was a treaty between the US and that time USSR for not conducting any nuclear test in the atmosphere. So US suspected that USSR will do that. So they sent some satellites which are called Vela satellites, and they first detected gamma ray burst in 1967. And then in various satellites, if we see the time difference, we can point out some direction that where these gamma ray bursts are coming, and the Earth and the Moon, they were excluded from the source of the gamma ray burst. So they were extra something. Yeah. So they are very extreme, extremely intense flashes of gamma rays. The flux is some 10 to the power minus 6 per centimeter square per second, and the spectrum of the gamma ray burst is in 10 keV to 10 MeV energy range, and this burst 97. So because they last they last for tens of seconds, and then there is localization in the hard X-ray detector is very poor. So their distance could not be ascertained for some 25 years till this satellite BAPOSAX in 1997. It has narrow field instruments on board, so it detected afterglow from the gamma ray burst, which is a emission in the multi-wavelength in higher wavelengths. So this GRB was first to be detected in the redshift was detected for this burst, and then conclusively it was detected later after 2 months for this another GRB, and it was established that the gamma ray bursts are have cosmological origin. So once we
I have one question. regarding the first detection of the gamma ray burst by the US Vela satellite. So that is only the light curve they got, or they have some kind of spectrum also?
I think they got light curve.
So how they have concluded it from the light curve that this is not a nuclear burst, or this is coming from the some extragalactic or the gamma ray burst?
So there are 2 or 3 Vela satellites. So once you have a light curve in one, you have in another, you know the time difference between them. You know where they are orbiting in the orbit, and then you can like just get something. So you know the distance between the two. You know if it is coming from there, you draw this perpendicular thing, cos of theta, time delay between.
Okay.
You know that the direction is not from the moon or the earth. So okay, so once you know that the gamma ray burst, they are having high redshift, they have very important implication, such as we know that the type 1a supernovae, which they have discovered that the universe has the accelerated expansion. The universe is the expansion of the universe is accelerating, and similarly, if we have gamma ray bursts, which are so the type 1a supernovae are up to redshift 1 or 2, if I remember it correctly. So then the gamma ray bursts which are detected to very high redshift, they are like this B0904. It is detected 8.2 redshift, which is like universe was just 3.8% of its current age. So once we have gamma ray burst at very high redshift, they are very important probes to the cosmic dark ages and star formation, host galaxies and high redshift galaxies, etc. One complication is that we see the type 1a supernovae, they have very standard light curves. So in type 1a supernovae, the light curve, the faster it rises, the faster it decays. And that is a correlation between that stretch factor and versus the luminosity. And exploiting this correlation, one can then find the distance to the object and then study the cosmology. But in case of gamma ray burst, the light curves are very erratic. The prompt emission light curve observed by the Bartsey here, shown for the Bartsey here, you can see they are like have single pulses, they have multiple overlap pulses, and so they are not very standard. On the other hand, many of you might be knowing that there will be some correlations which can be used for cosmological studies. And for the distribution of the duration of the gamma ray burst, if we just plot the T90, the 90% of the flux we received in this time, then it shows that there can be 2 classes, and they are associated with different origins. One is short gamma ray burst, other long gamma ray burst. And this short gamma ray burst, they are then associated to mergers, and long gamma ray burst, they have some supernova associated with them detected, and they are associated with the collapsers. The massive stars, they collapse, they core collapse, and then you get a gamma ray burst. I will be mostly talking about long gamma ray burst here. And in so gamma ray burst, after the prompt emission ends, then there is afterglow emission also, which is emission for longer periods of time, and they are in multi-wavelength and higher wavelengths. So the various light curves are shown here in X-ray. The rightmost is X-ray, then optical and radio bands. And the light curves have simple power law kind of decay kind of behavior in both spectrum and then in light temporal behavior, and then also in spectrum also they have power law kind of spectrum. So so now coming to the prompt emission, and one of the most important conclusion that could be made from the very high variability of this prompt emission light curve was.
A question from Pankaj.
Yeah,
Hi Vikas.
Yes.
Okay, so you said that there is a power law decay with time for the three, that radio, optical, and X-ray. So are these power laws similar in all the bands, or they are different?
You mean time? Okay, yeah, time is.
Yeah, you just showed three light curves, right? Radio and I mean a bunch of light curve in radio, optical, and X-rays.
Yes.
And you said that there is a power law decay.
I got it. So I will come to the theory of afterglows, and I will answer your question there.
No, that is okay. What I'm asking is, I mean, observationally, I'm not going into theory part, whether the the slopes, let's say in the radio bands, in the optical bands, and the X-ray, the power law form and this decay is same. I mean, let's say some spectral index will be there. So is it same for the three bands, three energy ranges?
So like actually, so there is more into this thing. I mean, it will take some time, and I have some slides to show this answer to this question particularly. So please wait for a few minutes, and I will show this thing. Okay, thank you. Then one of the most important conclusion that could be drawn from the very fast variability of the gamma ray burst was that they coupled with the distance, they will be this millisecond variability time scale. You can have upper limit on the emission radius, and then because of the high distance, you will have the fluence of the radiation will be very high in a very small region. So if we consider just Newtonian mechanics, then this region which have such high density of the photons, the photons will annihilate themselves, and we should not be able to see the radiation above 511 keV, which is the rest mass energy of electrons. But then we actually see the radiation above 511 keV. So this can be avoided. This is called the compactness problem, and it can be avoided if we have the emission region moving relativistically. So, one of this implication from the fast variability was. Okay. So this plot I have shown there the variability of the short and long GRB both put together, and it just shows that there is very high variability. The temporal variability is very low, which can be found in GRBs. Now, other thing which comes is the outflow. The outflow can be isotropic also, but then this 19705 something supernova, that GRB which I have shown, which conclusively showed that the GRBs are cosmological, that have a radio afterglow detection also. And from the scintillation of the scintillation in the radio afterglows, you can tell the how fast the region is moving by measuring that radio afterglow is detected after some days, and then how much the region has expanded. So there was a apparent superluminal motion detected for GRBs in that study, and that also implies that you need a relativistic motion, because the apparent superluminal motion means that you are viewing something at some angle, and then it shows you apparent superluminal motion. And another thing that can come out of that study is that if GRBs are isotropic, then the prompt emission should be emitted very efficiently. You needed some 98% efficiency to emit the prompt emission, and since this was high to any known dissipation mechanism, understanding of any dissipation mechanism, it could be that the gamma ray burst are collimated, and that would reduce the efficiency problem, and that will solve this problem. And then later on, so one consequence from the collimated jets is that you have some emission which is relativistic and which is beamed. So you have some beam emission, and then because this region which is moving relativistically will be decelerated by the Sankar medium, it will slow down and the beaming angle will increase. At some point of time, in the beaming angle will cross the jet angle, opening angle, and therefore there will be no. Earlier there will be the beaming angle will be increasing, and you will be able to see more and more of the surface of the jet head. But then finally, once the beaming angle exceeds the jet opening angle, then you will not be. There will be a decay. There will be no additional source for the jet surface, and you will be see a decaying behavior in the afterglow light curve. And this, because it is a geometric effect, it should show an achromatic behavior. In all wavelengths, it should occur at the same time. So this also, for example, this GRP, it has shown achromatic jet break, and therefore it also shows that GRPs are collimated.
What are the different colors cross?
Sorry?
Different colors in this plot, the bottom one?
Swift XRT at 1 kV, different wavelengths.
Different wavelengths. So the one in the orange, how did they estimate the break time from 1 point?
Okay, so
the one in the orange one, right? So there is only one data point.
Yeah. So so this is like I think there are other upper limits also there, and then they have this model.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you have one model, other model, and here you can just show, okay, if this is this, it may be not fitting, but just you can show, okay, this would have been light curve, it could have been like this. Okay. I mean, not necessarily fitting, but okay, 3 wavelengths are showing the light curve like this. It would have been like this for this band, and there are upper limits also.
Yeah, the orange one is not a fit. It is basically from the XRT, and the red is R band. So they have assumed the same jet break index. The index after the jet break to be the same as those two. Just plotted it.
Yeah, because so this VLA 6 gigahertz and 9.8 gigahertz are very different compared to the other 3. I mean, okay, 2. So they are not similarly like the red one or the green points. Why?
Yeah, so this is your earlier question also, because this afterglow, the theory of the afterglow also, that comes from the blast wave deceleration. So while the medium is swept in, so there is synchrotron emission, and then at different frequencies, synchrotron spectrum has like peaks in different frequencies, and then this evolution, the whole deceleration wave is evolving with Lorentz vector, and finally this all frequencies evolve. So at different frequencies, you will see the light curve different kind of light curve. So you may see the X-ray light curve decaying, but then you may see the radio light curve rising after many days also.
That's also because radio is absorbed in the video.
Yeah, so in radio, okay.
Detection will come only later.
Yeah.
Initially, due to self-absorption, you don't see anything.
Okay, Pankaj, are you okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Fine.
So here we comes for that particular thing. So then the model of the gamma ray burst, that there is like the fireball model of the gamma ray burst. So we have some very hot plasma which is released at some 10⁻⁷ centimeter radius, and then it expands because of its thermal pressure. And this thermal energy is given to the kinetic energy of the jet. So it is inevitable that this jet will be colliding with the circumburst medium, and then not going very deep into what happened and what was the problem, but finally this will have an external shock with the ambient medium, and that will produce synchrotron radiation through the like electron positron gyrating in the magnetic field, and this synchrotron emission is seen as afterglows. And then we have the afterglow spectrum for synchrotron coming from a power law distribution of electrons. We have very standard spectrum. We have the this fast cooling behavior, where we have first below the peak injection frequency we can have nu1/3 spectral behavior, but then there will be cooling of the electrons. Although electrons are radiating, so they will be emitting and they are cooling themselves. So this there will be another cooling break that one, this one. So cooling break. Yeah, similarly, this both cooling break can be like cooling break can be lower than the injection break. So that will be decide the regime of the cooling, fast cooling and then slow cooling. And if they're near, then intermediate cooling. So the synchrotron spectrum have one prediction for the slopes, that the low energy slope would be 1/3, and similarly for the fast cooling it will be this -1/2 or -1/2, which is in terms of spectrum it translates to -3/2. So that has some consequences in the prompt emission. That, like, if you see some spectrum which is violating this slope, then you will say that there is a violation of that, which is called line of death. So the synchrotron line of death, and then there should be thermal emission in GRPs also, which is also seen indirectly in terms of black body spectrum. So one important thing from this afterglow is that there are once you know that the afterglow, so the jet is propagating in a wind medium, then there is a constant density medium. So you have some closure relations. So you know the flux density T2 minus alpha, temporal behavior and spectral behavior. They are related based on the regime of the cooling and like fast cooling, slow cooling, or also like if there is adiabatically cooling or radiative cooling, and then if it is wind medium or this ISM, and based upon these closure relations, you can get that, like in which regime the emission is radiation is being emitted in the afterglows.
Vikas, can you explain the adiabatic cooling and the radiative cooling and what is the effect in the afterglow?
So adiabatic cooling, something is just expanding, it is cooling. Radiative cooling, so you can just write that PV gamma to is equal to constant. Adiabatically cooling. There is no energy.
The energy injection and the
once energy injection happens, then the thing is just expanding.
Okay.
So then you just you know that adiabatic relation PV gamma is equal to constant, and you can drive the how the temperature of that thing will be falling. The frequencies will be evolving. Similarly, radiative cooling, the synchrotron are like losing, they are giving energy in terms of radiation. So that will have cooling also. And then you have this continuity equation, something del n by something which is equal to source term, cooling term. And then you solve that, you will get the spectrum also. Yeah, so I think more details will come in Chandi's talk. He will give a talk, and then he will particularly talk on this kind of things, but I think you are clear with the idea. Okay, thank you. So, so from what we can get from this blast wave, the acceleration, this is the first time we have an opportunity to measure the Lorentz factor of the gamma ray burst, other than the prompt emission, which I will talk about later. But if we have the afterglow and we have the optical light curve, for example, in X-rays it is not very evident because prompt emission or prompt emission is still dominating. But in optical, you can see a rising light curve, and then a power law decaying light curve. And from this, you can get a Lorentz vector. So you have some infected energy, and then you have the circumburst medium, some mass sweeping in. Once in the comoving frame, this mass becomes equal to the mass of the half of the kinetic energy of the jet, then the things start deaccelerating. And then you will have a Lorentz factor from there. So this was for a handful of GRBs, it was studied, and then it was found that we get Lorentz factor, and the Lorentz factor is correlated with the isotropic energy of the gamma ray burst, the energy content in the prompt emission of the gamma ray burst. So we have a conclusion from there that the powerful jets are faster, and it is less dependent. Like there is a mild dependence on the density and the efficiency also, which gives this scatter around this line.
What is this TPL?
Peak time of the afterglow. Okay. And in the prompt emission, so the prompt emission spectrum of the gamma ray burst it is a very non-thermal spectrum, very smooth conjunction of two power laws. So we have a peak energy, and then the peak energy decays with time. So like the spectrum evolves with time. And then we have also the behavior of this decaying, the peak energy decaying behavior, which is the peak energy tracks the right side. The harness tracks the intensity, and then there is this kind of light curves which have the left side, which have the peak energy tracking the intensity. There are studies which shows that if we have multiple pulses which superimpose, the intrinsic behavior of the peak energy is from hard to soft, but then because there are multiple pulses which are superimposed on each other, so that can give rise to such kind of intensity tracking behavior.
Because you need to plug in your laptop.
उधर ही नीचे में
Okay.
So because in this evolution diagram that you are showing for nu f nu, so why is it become harder at the high energies while the peak shifts lower at lower energies?
Which one? This.
So you have this animation or GIF, whatever that the one that was playing on the top panel.
Okay, this one, the first one.
Yeah, that one, yes. So you had this, yeah. So it becomes harder, it seems, at higher energy while the peak shifts. So I'm just curious why. I mean, so there are sharper as well, but there are harder and flatter things.
So as the peak is decaying, you mean the beta is increasing?
Okay, I don't know which one is beta responsible for the higher energy.
High energy power is becoming harder as the this peak is decreasing.
There is a break, one is beta and one is alpha. I don't know which one is. The spectrum becomes harder.
So before the break, you have the low energy index, which is called alpha, and the above break, you have the beta.
Yeah, so it's a beta then.
Yeah. So you mean this jet. So this is a particular example for one JRB. It may not be very general thing. So this is JRB 151006A, which has shown this kind of behavior, that it has a additional black body also. So
okay. So it's observed behavior.
Yeah, it has some black body also. So black body itself, there is a black body emission at the lower energies, and maybe that you can not directly then correlate the peak with the beta part. But yeah,
okay.
So if you see, there is some cutoff spectrums also later on. The yellow spectrum, their peak is still decaying, but they are cut off at high energy. Yeah.
But because in the higher energies, the black body part will not be so significant.
So black body, if you add at the low energy, then it shift your peak energy. So the Pankaj is asking that if the peak energy going to low energies and the beta is becoming harder, they are correlated. So I'm telling that maybe if you add one black body there, then the evolution of the peak energy and that beta becomes something different. So, yeah. And this is a new F new plot, so it is not. I mean, the hardness seems very high here because you have multiplied by E square, but in the spectrum it is just not very big change. So then there can be a mixed kind of behavior also, where you see the hard to soft decay of the peak energy, and later on the peak energy rises. This could be a signature that there is a afterglow which has started, and the afterglow emission in the hard X-rays that is changing this peak energy.
Because that. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Pankaj, you carry on.
Yeah.
No, so you said that if you add a black body, the problem, I mean, my only worry is like, it seems a power law, the beta seems to be a power law, even if it is harder or softer, whatever you say. So, and you said that it is amplified because of nu F nu, that is okay, but what it says is that you have at at higher energies you have equally relevant power or much more power compared to the lower energy or similar power. So in terms of radiative, energetic output, it's very significant.
Yeah, yes. So yeah, again the same thing that the spectrum, this is not that easy. I mean, if you had a black body, the peak evolution will be different. And moreover, if I add the data points, you would see that the data points will be from the very top to the bottom. This is this model, fit model. And then if there was this energy range was extended to LLE. So I will, sorry, not LLE, 100 MeV. So if I add that also, it may cut off there also. And such kind of correlation that the peak energy and the beta is evolving together, like peak energy is. Okay, Pankaj, so I will come to the supported spheric dissipation model. I will show you there that why it is maybe like physically supported also, the argument which you are trying to make, that the peak energy.
Okay.
Yeah, there will be a figure which will very clearly show that this can be actually in fact possible what you are trying to say. Yeah. Next.
Because I could not understand the fact that the multiple pulses overlapping, how can you correlate it with the intensity tracking?
Yeah, so suppose there is a pulse which is hard and it is faint also, but it is hard. So initially it gives you like some peak energy, high energy, peak energy. Now there is a pulse which was decaying, but this faint pulse comes and it shifted that peak energy.
Okay.
So you can I refer you to the Preece. There is a work by Preece, which e-peak. So more details are there, but the idea is that once one peak, one has some evolution, then the other pulse is coming and which may be faint, but its peak energy is higher. And it is, for example, this the figure here, you don't see anything there, but the peak energy is high.
Mm-hmm.
So this can happen with multiple overlap pulses, that there is a faint pulse, but its peak energy is high. So these, all of them, they will mix and they will give you intensity trading kind of behavior. And this study, which e-peak by Robert Preece, they have very meticulously shown this thing. They have used the Fermi data and shown this, that this is happening. Okay.
Okay, please send me the reference.
Yes, sure. Okay, so the GRP pulses, there is more into the GRP pulses also. So there is a series of paper by John Hackett and Robert Preece. So they have shown that the GRP pulses are not very monotonously rising and falling, that exponentially rising and exponentially falling characteristics. But over them, there is a, if you fit with that model, Norris model, then there is a residual, which is found almost for like all single pulse GRPs. They have done the study on Swift GRPs, then they have done on Fermi GRPs, and they have also shown that for faint GRPs, it may not be, it may be that you don't see this, the initial part, and so you see that if you fit a Norris model, exponentially rising and falling, just like the left one, then you see there is one residual. There the model will be over predicting, under predicting. Then there will be at the peak also the model is under predicting, and then again, then at two places there is over predicting. So they have modeled this residual with a function, and then they have added that to Norris model. And also they have found that this residual has a time reversal characteristics. That if you are you start from the peak, you look to the left, and if you look to the right and just add some stretch factor, then both of these things are like mirror of each other. So this has very important implications. So the characteristics that how a pulse is produced and what are the properties of pulse, what shapes the pulse, they are not fully understood in GRPs. And in these very recent studies, they have found this kind of residual or the time reversal behavior. And what they have in their initial papers, they have explained that maybe there is an impactor which passes through some density, different density regions, and then it is somehow it come back also, passes again. So you have a time symmetric behavior. Similarly, they have this one, and then the right figure, you have maybe you have so density, symmetric density behavior like cloud 1, cloud A, cloud B, cloud C, and then this impactor passing from that. And then you may have the impactor itself, symmetric impactor, and cells, they pass through a single cloud. But a more physical explanation came recently. Suppose you have suppose you toss a stone on a water pond, and then the stone moves very fast, then the waves are spreading. Then what you will get, that once the impactor, it moves faster, then the waves which were emitted, so first you have this, so impactor, the waves which is emitted first is received first. But then later, if this exceed the speed is more than the waves are traveling, then the wave which was emitted last, it will be received first. Okay. So I think you get it. So okay, this is emitted first, received first. Once it exceeds this speed of these waves, then what was emitted last is received first. So this was emitted first, but it will be received last. So there is a time reversal kind of behavior, and they have now come up with an explanation that maybe during this impactor, which goes from subluminal to superluminal velocities. So the light is, the radiation is going outward, and it is, because it is going through some medium, it has some speed which is less than the impactor itself moving. So just like the Cherenkov radiation, and then you see this time reversal kind of behavior. So they have demonstrated this by two examples, that subluminal to superluminal or superluminal to subluminal. In both cases, either one of them will be Cherenkov like pulse, and then other will be like the pulse which was emitted. Okay. So this is also one example where the manifestation of the relativistic motion in GRBs can happen, and there can be a transition for subluminal to superluminal motions in GRBs. Now I come to the spectrum and to get the Lorentz spectrum from the.
But whenever you see one GRB, how can you distinguish different pulses? Because you are just giving an example of throwing one stone in the pond, and there is some ripples, and one is catching up the other. But whenever you see one GRB, you cannot see the waves, or you see the cells. You cannot see the cells differently.
Yeah.
So how can you predicting that this subluminal to superluminal velocity is achieving?
Yeah, so like the figure is for single pulse GRBs. We have impactor, it is emitting, and then it has emission which is reaching you. So the light curve is increasing, then it receives, the velocity change happen, then the light curve is falling. So that kind of thing. But the more complicated example, that we have multiple cells superimposing on each other, then I mean separating or taking this, breaking that kind. I mean separating the pulses will be difficult, and which one is like light curve, which impactor is shaping which part of the light curve would be difficult. Like if you have single pulse GRBs, right? Single pulse GRBs, then this kind of behavior.
So we can observe this kind of superluminal motion in case of the GRBs.
This is observed thing. So this study is on Fermi GRBs, and is on Swift GRBs, and on those GRBs, bright GRBs, they have found that these characteristics are time reversal characteristics are shown in the GRB light curves, and they have come up with, first they come up with 2 or 3 explanations, which also sounds equally good, that somehow if the vector passes through a density, different densities, and then come back also. But this one sounds to me more physical, because a jet can go from subluminal to superluminal motion, and that is like it is exceeding the speed by which the radiation is coming out. So this kind of thing, and I mean this is a very 2020 paper, very like ongoing. So now come to the GRB spectrum. So once we have the GRB spectrum shows one simple band function, which we have said alpha and beta, and then a peak energy. Then we have a black body emission there. Then we can have a third component, which is from the afterglows. And in the energy region, which is 20 MeV, 200 MeV, this parabola of the first could cut off also due to the compactness problem. So even if we do not observe JRB in that energy, and we observe handful of JRBs which show some highest energy photon in prompt emission, and then this second parabola goes below the sensitivity of the detector, we can use this to set a limit on the. We can use this to set a limit on the Lorentz vector by using the compactness problem. Okay, so we have the photons which are getting annihilated, and then we could have a second case where the photons, they are also scattered of the pairs which will be produced in the first annihilation, and then we can also have the various mechanism which can shape this the cutoff are these three, and then the third one is the baryons associated electrons, they can also scatter. So this is the very first thing where we have the some high energy photon observed in the Fermi light, and then we use them to get a lower limit on the Lorentz vector of the JRBs. But if we have some JRB which is showing this cutoff, then it will be very it will not be a low limit, but we can determine the Lorentz vector by using this formalism, the compactness problem formalism. So there is example of this JRB 1610625B where a clear cutoff was seen, and for other handful of JRBs they have used this formalism and measured the Lorentz vector from the cutoff in the prompt emission spectrum, high energy cutoff in the prompt emission spectrum, and this also shows that the more powerful jets are they are faster, and this is a conclusion which is derived in a different by using a different method than the bulk wave de-acceleration. So now there is another thing, that if we can separate out the black body, the thermal emission component in the spectrum, then it is also very useful, because then using that thermal component, we can derive the properties of the ejecta or the emission region, which is giving us thermal component. So we have some energy which is injected to the system at radius r0, then the Lorentz vector, the thermal pressure drives the acceleration, and then it linearly the Lorentz vector increases linearly. Then at some point, because the radiation decoupled from the electropositrons and the baryons, then that cost with that Lorentz vector. So you have a fireball, it expands and the speed increases. At some point, the speed becomes constant. So what can happen is that this constant speed should match with the bulk de-acceleration, the Lorentz vector we get from the bulk de-acceleration. So this is a model, photospheric model, and here also if you get a emission, photospheric emission, you can get the Lorentz vector using this. So now, so this is the part, Pankaj, where I told I will talk about this harness. So in subphotospheric dissipation model, you have photons which are outgoing, then there is a dissipation which happens there, which can be due to internal shocks or maybe the reconnection kind of thing. But once dissipation happens, those synchrotron photons, they are upscattered, comptonized, and this comptonization saves this spectrum. So the spectrum at various arising from various optical depths is shown here on the right. So here you can see that the peak energy is low, then you can have a beta part which is harder. Okay.
Okay. So since you have any query, so in the previous one, just the previous slide, you said that there is a cutoff. I think that you are referring to the blue data point, just the previous slide before this one.
At this right side, if you see this old spectrum in the model at the right side, they are cutting off because of the maximum energy they have and the maximum energy they can go to. Like after that, that annihilation kind of thing will happen. But
no, so I am not talking right now about this particular slide, but just the previous slide.
Yeah.
So in the previous slide, you said that there is a cutoff. I think you are referring to the blue point, is it?
Yes, yes.
Right? So I don't know. I mean, how is it a cutoff? It is almost an order of magnitude wider. I mean, cutoff I was expecting like a sharp feature, but it seems to expand at least in an order of magnitude in energy range or the frequency range, whichever is the x-axis.
So actually, so if you assume in the comoving frame that the photon field is isotropic, then you will have like some target photon, which are this beta part, high energy part of the band.
Yes.
For every photon, you have some other photon which it can annihilate, and then you have cutoff. Okay, but because you are telling that it is smooth, it is not very sharp cutoff. So there are studies which are by Ganot 2008. So they, if you take the all that space and time and also the anisotropy of the photon, then this cutoff is not smooth. Not very sharp cutoff at one energy. It is like cutoff at distributed energies. Moreover, so if you see the things happening in the comoving frame, the electrons themselves have distribution of the speeds. They are not at one speed. So similarly, the photons, so two electrons combining giving rise to photon. So because the electrons were moving at some Lorentz vector, they will give you a photon cutoff, and they will give you photon at some speed. And similarly, the other two electrons which were at different speeds, they will combine. And so I think the whole things that the space, time, and the anisotropy and the distribution of the electrons, if we take care into these all things, then this become very smooth. I mean, not very sharp cutoff kind of thing.
Okay, see, probably I'm not sure about this space and part. That may be a reason, but at least this part, the one that you are saying that for a given electron energy, you need an given another electron. I mean, for a given photon energy, you need another photon energy of gamma ray, let's say, or vice versa. That will not hold because the moment it become optically thick, it will just go into a cascade mode rather than going one by one event. So I don't think that is maybe space part I cannot comment. So I am not sure about. Okay, I take that as a.
So there are suppose all cold electrons, and then they are combining and giving you. They will give you cutoff at one energy. But if there are electrons which have a distribution of the Lorentz vector, then they will they will definitely smear out this cutoff.
No, so you are saying that this cutoff is because of electron, or this cutoff is because of photon and photon going annihilation, doing an annihilation?
So it's
which one is you are referring to?
Yeah, so
both are very different.
Yeah, photon annihilating, but this photon giving electron positron. So it's like the cutoff is there, but then the cutoff is being shaped by other factors also, because the electrons will positron will annihilate. They will give you another photon, and that photon will be at some energy which is dependent upon the distribution of the electrons. Now this photon will interact with the some other photon. So depending upon the for example, if the two photons have the energy 511 keV, both of them will join and give you electron positron 2. But then if there can be a less energy photon and a higher energy photon, they will also interact with some cross section, and then they will also give you the electron positrons. I mean, there are factors which will shape this,
because I think you can proceed and Pankaj.
Yeah, that I agree. That is a process.
Let's discuss after the talk. I mean,
yeah.
Now and
okay, so now coming to this 19014C GRB, which was the first GRB detected in TeV, and it showed that there is some very high energy photons greater than 100 MeV, which are like these red photons shown here. And in case of 19014C, this component is very bright. In case of the 1605098, this is not that bright, and there are green photons which could be from the prompt emission. So this GRB, if we model this, then we can find in the MEV LED part, we find a cutoff there. And we can also see that if we see the temporal evolution of the spectral index, then this spectral index after some time, 2.5 seconds, become harder. So that crosses the synchrotron line of that, and it can be that there is thermal emission in this GRB. So we come up with a moreover, the cutoff, from the cutoff we get a Lorentz vector, and that this Lorentz vector is 300, and on the other hand the Lorentz vector from the bulk de-escalation is 600. So this which should be equal, they are not equal. So we come up with this picture for this GRB, which is from the cutoff we get. We have thermal spectrum and we have cutoff also, and we have non-thermal spectrum also. So there is a first pulse which is giving you radiation in a zone which is optically thin, and then there is another episode which is happening below the photosphere, and dissipation happening there will give rise to a thermal spectrum, and then there is this last component which is external shock. Now to support this argument, we have from the Lorentz vector, because the Lorentz vector in the obtained from the cutoff and from the bulk de-escalation, they are not matching, and they should have matched. We have in that the Lorentz vector, when we get it from the cutoff, we have assumption that the emission region is at internal shock radius, and this can be obtained from the variability. But if we if we leave that emission radius R gamma to be free, then we can actually, using this cutoff, we can constrain the region of the emission and the Lorentz vector, the parameter space of Lorentz vector and the R gamma. So the allowed region will be above towards the upside of this space. So we also get for the same GRB, we also get from the photospheric emission, because there is thermal component, we can get the Lorentz factor from the photospheric emission. And because the cutoff, when we put the R gamma in the cutoff equal to the photospheric radius, we get the Lorentz vector which is equal to the within error bars equal to the blast wave de-acceleration. So this agrees very well, and therefore the cutoff not only gives you Lorentz vector, but it also acts as a tool to constrain the emission region in the GRBs. Next thing is more into this method of measuring cutoff using the prompt emission. So there are modifications into this. The additional things are that, for example, this first picture at right up there, we see the emission from the beaming angle, and then if we see the photospheric emission, and then if we have this shell, photospheric shell, then it has some variability. And if we use this variability in terms of the photospheric radius in the optical thickness formula, which I showed in the last slide, then it also gives you one more method to measure the Lorentz vector of the gamma ray burst. Similarly, there will be the modification that there will be not simple isotropic field in the co-moving frame, the photon field, but there can be a space, time, and also direction independence of the photon field. And when we include that and the modified opacity, we have modified opacity, then the Lorentz vector can be 2 to 3 factors less than what is obtained from these cutoffs. Yeah. So, and another modification in this study could be that the electron positrons which are produced, they itself Compton downscatter the photons, and therefore the cutoff will be downscatters. So actual cutoff will be modified by the downscattering by the pairs produced. So this also gives that the Lorentz vector will be different than what is simply obtained from the cutoff compactness argument. So the last modification, which is this one, they have included. So if we are observing GRB at some angle, then we have we are at some Doppler, the energy will be lower, and similarly the fluence will be lower, and similarly the cutoff will be affected. And more general contractness limit comes if we include this viewing angle into the geometry. So final thing is when we, so this is all about the Lorentz vector. And the final thing is that there are complications in the understanding of GRBs, that if we consider the photospheric emission model, then we do not expect polarization to be coming from the photospheric emission, because the information of the polarization is lost when there are multiple Compton upscatterings. So if we observe in the astroset, we are observing like high polarization. That is a problem for the photospheric models. Moreover, the photospheric models at low energies, they do not match very well with the optical data expected friends from the model does not match very well with the optical observations. Similarly, in the prompt emission synchrotron emission, if we have simply simple polar distributed electrons, and then we get a synchrotron spectrum where the electrons are cooling also and they are producing synchrotron spectrum, then there are also problems that for an efficient cooling you need low radius, the emission region close to the central object. But then it is observed that GRBs are not efficiently cooling in the spectrum. The observed spectrums are not efficiently cooling, they are marginal cooling. And this is a problem because then it has to be away from the central region, because magnetic field will be weaker away from the central region. And further, the inverse Compton losses, they will not be there if we are near the central object. So like the compactness problem, if we are near the central object, then the region will be compact and the inverse Compton losses will be there. So again, we will be away from the central region. But when we consider this thing that we are away from the central region, then it is a problem for explaining the variability of the GRBs. To explain the millisecond variability, you have to be near to the central object. So there are modifications like in terms of the mini jets, like there can be mini jets which can help you give variability, but there are the compactness problem and the inverse Compton losses problem will still be there. So then the recently 2020, they come up, Ghisnani et al., they come up with the proton synchrotron model. So for protons, they are not very efficient accelerators. So you can have a high magnetic field and you can be near to the central object, and then you give proton emission. So the variability will be explained, and then you have the synchrotron spectrum also. But the problem would be in case of P gamma thing, where you expect in this reaction you expect neutrinos, and then so the ice cube will upper limits, or you should be able to see neutrinos coming from GRBs. Yeah, and the take home message. So GRBs are highly relativistic. Then we have many methods to obtain the Lorentz spectrum of GRBs, but they are not at present. They are like every one of them has some implications, and they are not agreeing with each other. At least the prompt emission one, and so yeah, this mini jets and this thing I have already explained, and also then inverse Compton, the proton scattering. There will be upcoming missions which will be SVM, which will be a Swift, very sensitive version of the Swift, and Thesis, which is also telescope working in soft X-rays and up to 30 kV, I guess, and it will be able to see GRBs to very far away distances in the universe, and it will have a onboard infrared telescope also, which can also observe very faint GRBs. And then CTA, the Cherenkov telescope array, which will be very sensitive version of LAT, and will be very useful to study this high energy emission and this cutoff area of the GRB. Similarly, radio and polar will be for polarization measurement. Thank you. This is my job.
So for the polarimetry in the astroset, in the hard X-rays, so which kind of GRB do you expect for the polarimetric observation? Means how can you decide this is suitable for the polarimetric observations or not?
So this detector that has some efficiency of measuring polarization. So what you need is Compton scattering. So you have CGT pixels, CGT, what we call it, semiconductor pixels. So you have then photons which come and it hit, and it has Compton scattering. So this process is like 5% of the events Compton scatters. So if you want to measure, if you want to fit some curve, you need some 20 for example, if you have 0-degree angle and you have 45-degree angle, because you have one pixel next to other pixel, you have pixel like this way, 45-degree, and you have pixel at 90-degree. So you have some bins, angle bins, 0-degree, 45-degree, 90-degree. So you have some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you need, for example, to apply chi-square statistics, you need 20 events in one bin. So 9, 20, so 180. So you need 200 counts to measure, fit a curve to that modulation, if there is a modulation. So you need at least 200 counts. So if you go by the GRB flux, then you will come to know that some GRBs with 1e minus 5 ergs per centimeter square per second, they fluence actually, not per second. So they will be able to give you this many counts. So once you have these many counts, then you can measure polarization. Yeah, if the GRB is polarized, then very good. Otherwise, if unpolarized, more problem. Yeah, you need to count statistics plus GRB. If it is polarized, then you will have good signal, and you can still fit that modulation curve. But if the low polarization, then maybe itself flat, or I mean there will be problem. But okay, to fit a curve to model, you need to data, you need 200 counts. Yeah.
So because you use a fireball model, you don't use the fire cell model?
Fire cell.
And
basically, it is like fireball is initially a fireball. It transfer energy to the kinetic energy of the jet. But then again, there is a strata of the Lorentz vector in the jet. So you can tell that these are fire cells. So they collide and they produce internal shocks. So basically, it is fire cells ultimately. When internal shocks are produced and which give you the prompt emission, you have fire cells.
They will be similar.
Yeah, so fireball expand, it can change the energy to kinetic energy of the jet. But then they collide, they again change the kinetic energy to thermal energy, or the inject energy to the electrons. Then electron radiate through the synchrotron emission. So this is like fire cell. Yeah, maybe I don't know actually the name, but I think it is something like this. Any other questions?
I have another question. So according to means you have shown the synchrotron line of death. So how do you consider it? Means from the spectral indices evolution, you just consider this is certain spectral indices, and below that thing this is the synchrotron line of death, and upper that thing this is not.
So if you go like the past literature used to treat is that there is a distribution of electrons, and you have these indices which are expected from the model. But if you have something harder than -1/3, then you say that synchrotron line of death is violated. But then people come up with other things, like when they rather than modeling with band function, they model with 2 breaks. Then they found that the indices are more or less agreeing with what is expected from the synchrotron model. So that is one thing. Other thing is physical modeling. So when microbudgets was 2019, they have used electron distribution. They cooled them. They are emitting. They are cooling. They are giving emission again. Then when they studied this thing, then they found that whatever the spectrum which has the synchrotron line of death, which is we generally use from the band function, they can all be explained just by the synchrotron, simple like cooling thing, and there is no such problem. So what we do in literature is actually we are sticking to that old convention, and then we are every time we are driving wrong conclusions. Yeah.
Any questions from the online participants?
So because if I may ask a question, so this cutoff thing, so I'm not going to into whether it's a power law as you said or something. Okay, I will. What I want to know is like this cutoff for this cutoff to appear, you always need to have at least GeV or more higher energy photons as well, right? So by default, this model, yes, sorry. So by default, does this model, I mean, does this imply that GRB always have GeV emissions? But okay, or most of the GRB have GeV emission, but we don't detect because of let's say sensitivity issue or whatever. I mean, is it true to say?
Yeah, you can say that because the spectrum is also cutting off. So there will be like the points at the high energy, like this is up to 100 MeV because it is cutting off. Above 100 MeV, there will be very less flux. So that is one thing.
No, that is okay. That I agree. I am actually asking a very different one. See, this one cutoff is you are saying is because it's a SARP. So after 100 MeV, I think, yeah, something like that, you don't have enough photons to have good statistics or have data points in there. What I am saying is like this, for this kind of cutoff to happen, where photon-photon interaction take place, or annihilation take place. So you must have a high, you must have MeV and GeV photons, right?
Yes. MEV.
So that it can annihilate with a low energy photons, let's say X-ray or optical, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
So does it, what I am asking is whether or not this implicitly imply that, okay, GRB always have MEV, GeV emissions, and even though we don't detect it, they have. I mean, I'm trying to just extrapolate.
Yeah, so if you have this spectrum, the lower energy power law and then high energy power law. So if there is to cut off, then it will extend to like all the way, whatever energy is possible with whatever sensitivity. But at some point, this spectrum cuts off because of the like compactness thing, that or the photon opacity to the photon. And even not that, I think that clean Messina thing will also come into picture at some point of time. Like there will be maximum energy which will be like, it will be limited to that. I mean,
okay,
if nothing to cut off, then it can always go anywhere.
So what was the explanation for this TV detected GRB?
So
I mean, the TV emission.
What I am talking here is from the emission component. So what
okay.
TV is afterglow. This you see the third component.
Yes.
The cutoff which I talked is in the first component here from the emission.
Okay.
And there is a third component which is from the external source, and then it is that component that it extends to all the way to that sub TV, and then it is that synchrotron self-comptonization component which is detected in MAGIC telescope.
Okay, and the other question is, see, so you okay, it's just a query rather than a question. So you said, so this second component which you say that it is, I mean, which I have heard in almost all the GRB talk, there is a thermal component, right? Okay. So I remember that even in the bulk componentization case, so rather than electron distribution doing a componentization, your this medium that your emission region is moving very fast, I mean very high Lorentz factor. That will also give componentized spectrum, but rather one peak not that broad enough like the typical synchrotron or inverse Compton peak. So if you overlap the two, it will appear like a thermal emission. So is it is it now certain in the GRB field that this is a thermal component and not a bulk componentized component?
So like there are two leading models. One photosphere dissipation model, people says that there is a dissipation happening below the photosphere, and it gets componentized, and it gives you, depending upon the optical depth. So there is high optical depth, the photons will be more and more thermalized, spectrum will be more and more thermalized, and it will give you this blue curve here, which is at optical depth 2500 meter, which is more or like black body. But if it is happening, the dissipation is happening near the photosphere, then they will be less thermalized, and the spectrum will look like what we see in the non-thermal spectrum also. So the photospheric model people, they and they defend this non-thermal looking spectrum, saying that it is subphotospheric dissipation model spectrum, which is a Comptonization spectrum, and it is a photospheric model, which is photospheric emission is the emission mechanism in GRBs. On the other hand, the synchrotron people, they model the same thing with synchrotron cooling, like coming from the cooling electrons. Then they also explain that the spectrum can be like, if you forget that line of that thing, because that is drawn from a simple synchrotron model, and if you add the cooling, then you can explain the spectrum from that also. But both of these models have some other things which can like differentiate between these two models, and that is, for example, polarization. So if you are in this photospheric model and you see this blue spectrum, very narrow spectrum, then it is happening below the photosphere, much below the photosphere, and Comptonized, highly Comptonized. So you will not be able to see the polarization. And suppose you detect the polarization which is very high, then it is a problem for this model, and the synchrotron model will be the correct model. Then you can always play with the geometry and still explain this. But once a sample is there, big sample is there, and then you cannot always play with the geometry or something to explain this high polarization. Similarly, there will be another. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Discuss this offline now because we've already exceeded the time limit. So let us thank the speaker Vikas today for a very informative talk, and we'll end this. जावेद, ये आप रिकॉर्डिंग स्टॉप कर देंगे?
ठीक है मैम।
और इसको बंद कर दीजिएगा।
ओके मैम। हंसा मैडम और अकेली मैडम हमारे यहाँ, ठीक है, आवाज पहचान लेना, अगली बार से बिल्कुल दंडवत प्रणाम में लग जाना। नहीं मैडम, अगर क्या आज ही कर दे कुछ आप जुगाड़ तो। ये इधर जुगाड़ कर दीजिए।
गरम यार।
नहीं आप अगर पुरानी तक कर दें
गरम
मैं क्या कहते हैं, फिर अपने किराए से आ जाएंगे और क्या करेंगे, नहीं कर देंगे नहीं देख लूंगा मैम, जैसा भी करूंगा। बता क्या कहते हैं, ये ना कि यहाँ ना मेरा टाइम अननेसेसरी वेस्ट होगा, मैं नहीं तो कैंपस का काम शुरू कर दूंगा। अच्छा
वो डला क्या फिर वो डला की
आप मुझे मैं तारा के साथ
इंस्ट्रूमेंट नहीं ला फिर
उसके बाद
तू बांध लग रहा है बिगर परमिशन अगर लगा बची है लोग नाम नहीं से
नहीं नहीं हो जाएगा आपकी दुआ से सब क्या कहते हैं हो जाएगा।
तो प्रगति की मैटर भाई यार आगे करियो तो वो पांच बैच कर चाहिए एंड पे पत्ती हैं एंड पे हमारा निकलने टाइम होना तुम मेरे
ओके थैंक यू। नहीं आप पुरानी तक का मेरा वो ठीक है, मैं आगे चला जाऊं या शाम को सुबह हां
हिमांशु
ठीक है आप सुबह का करता हूं। हां
होगी जी बाहर बच्चे साहब मैं आए
हां ठीक हां मुझे किसी को गाली देने का मन कर रहा है।